As we were saying, we'd be completely culturally inconsistent to not start a program on Germany on time, so we're going to do that. We've got a very rich program for you. This is Mike Schell. I am the CEO of Culture Wizard, and on the program today, we've got Ina Baum, who is our master trainer for Germany and who's an old colleague of mine that I've known for many years. And I'm sure you're going to enjoy and learn a lot from her in this program. As you know, this is a series that we're running on learning about different countries and cultures, and we've had a few very successful programs in the past, and I'm sure this is going to be one of those. So it's a rich program with lots of content and lots of material, so I'm not going to take any more time, but I want to turn the program over to Sean DeBerk, who's a director of intercultural training programs, and he'll set the stage and then give it to Ina, and we hope you'll learn a lot and then participate in the discussion later on.
Thanks. Thanks a lot, Mike. And again, thanks to everyone for your time today. We're thrilled to be here with you all. And I don't want to take any time either. I just want to explain a little bit about the Adobe Connect Room and how you can interact with us during this webinar. Of course, we always want the online webinar experience to be interactive. So feel free, and I'm sure Ina will share the sentiment. If you have a question, please just raise your voice, or you can raise your hand, and we can also catch you that way. If you see here at the top, there is a button where you can indicate that you've got a question. And there are a few other options there as well, but that's one way of communicating with us. We've also got the chat box. If you'd like to ask your questions there, simply type them in, and we'll be sure to monitor that area. Then we've got these polls here at the bottom, and most of you have answered them. But if you haven't, they'll be up for a little bit longer, so please go ahead and give us your responses there, and we'll be sure to respond to them and also to analyze them a little bit later. I think that's it on my end, so with that I'm going to pass everything to Ina so she can introduce herself.
Hello everybody. I'm very pleased to be here today. My name is Ina Baum. My last name Baum means tree in German, and I am German. I've been raised in Germany, and the connection I have with intercultural training is through consultancy. I have worked and lived abroad for many, many years in various countries, and through after management experience working in a consultancy, I came upon this subject as also in an environment where I met Mike Schell. And as Americans would say, to me it's the best since sliced bread, because it really helps you to work very effectively around the world, and I'm very, very happy to share many of my insights with you today on German culture. So, let's get started. Sean, can you help me with this?
Yes, definitely. We are going to play a video to begin. And I was hearing a little technology thing saying your call cannot go through. I'm not sure if anyone else is hearing that, but that may be a result of one of us trying to get onto the conference line, so I apologize for that. But we are going to get directly into a video. So if you've got volume on your computers, you can turn that up and listen to it that way. If not, I'm going to also be playing the audio through the phone here, so you can take your pick. But make sure your volume is up so you can hear this interaction.
Raymond Juarez is meeting with Franz Gold to create a software program the company plans to introduce in the coming year. He's finished his scheduled portion, and now he's waiting for the other team members to finish theirs. Raymond enters the conference room where Franz seems to be waiting impatiently. Raymond sits down without shaking hands.
Hello, Franz.
Good morning, Herr Juarez.
Please, we've been working together for 3 days already. Call me Raymond.
Is everything okay this morning?
Yes, everything is wonderful. Why do you ask?
Well, you're 15 minutes late.
Am I? Goodness, I'm very sorry. We've had some very long days. Franz, I was curious, do you have a favorite restaurant in town that you might recommend? Last evening, I just found myself wandering the city, wondering where I should go.
Oh, certainly. I will get a list together of good restaurants and include the phone numbers so you won't have trouble making a reservation. It was an oversight on my part.
Thank you. I really enjoy trying different food.
Herr Juarez, Raymond, have you finished the first phase of the scheduled design mock-up and the survey template?
Yes, I have. And better yet, I've even taken a shot at programming the course selection process. Would you like to see it?
Well, I'm interested. Tell me exactly what you have, because this was not the protocol that we had agreed upon, and my German team is already working on the second phase. Raymond, we are part of a team, and everyone has a team job. Creating a wireframe is not your job, and taking it out of order will upset the team.
Do you really think they will mind? I'm just trying to be helpful and move the project along more quickly.
I don't think they would appreciate your offer to help, and they certainly haven't asked for it.
Don't be upset about getting a no. That's just German directness. But there's a larger issue at stake here. The German belief in order would make Franz very uncomfortable to take a task out of sequence, even if it meant to accelerate the project. Germans are much more concerned with thorough validation and testing than they actually are with speed. Germans on a team work on a very independent basis, and they like to complete things in a step-by-step manner. So if he can perform his duties according to a schedule, no matter how rigid it is, he will be very happy.
Okay. It's me again, Ina, and after having seen this video, I'd be very interested to hear from you a little bit on how did you feel about this video? Was there anything in particular that you saw or that triggered you? If you could share your thoughts with me, that would be great.
This is Sean. I might jump in, actually. Just one thing that always strikes me is that Raymond was questioning Franz in saying, do you really think they'll mind? I'm just trying to be helpful.
Yes.
And it seems like, helping out is a good thing. In most cases, people would think, yeah, if someone can offer their help, it's a great thing. But uniquely in this situation, the help was not asked for and was out of sequence in the protocol. So that's an interesting thing. Could you perhaps comment on how that fits in the German context?
Yes, indeed I can. Germans are very much proud experts of their jobs. They own very much what they do. So there's sometimes a second side to offering help. So it could implicitly be taken or perceived, if you're trying to help me, you think I'm not doing my job properly. So there's a careful distinction between who is doing what job, and people take great pride in being able to do their job properly. So once we have agreed upon that you do this part and I do that part, it's very important for the German mindset that we stick to this order.
That's wonderful. And I'm just seeing a chat from Lori Brown.
Yeah,
Thank you, Lori. If everyone could mute their phones, that is something I missed when I was introducing everything in the Adobe Connect room. So that'll help reduce any background noise. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so it's probably they had a hard time hearing the video. It will be difficult to comment on parts of on this interaction.
Right. Did I hear someone in the background say something?
Yes, this is Don Allen. I have worked with Germans. Just looking at the video, though, it would, at first glance, how it would reflect back on me that Germans are somewhat inflexible. I don't know if it's the proper expectation, but it was kind of my take that there's a lot of inflexibility there.
Absolutely. And it's one of the things that is most said about Germans from non-Germans is that we are perceived as being inflexible. What I find interesting in intercultural management competence is that is trying to understand what is the true motivator for a behavior. And we'll come back to that later, but this inflexibility and this sense of order actually has a reason. So a great driver of German society is a need for controlling your environment. And that need for controlling your environment comes from a great degree of trying to avoid uncertainty in life. We'll come back to that later from various points because it's a core issue in German culture, actually.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Right. Sean, maybe we move on?
Sounds great to me. No, thank you.
Okay. So let me briefly share the objectives with you today, and I'm also looking at the polls down there, seeing that most people have traveled to Germany, that all of you so far, from the polls at least, have worked with Germans, and you're making a choice on what are the biggest challenges in working with the Germans. So we will add, obviously, those demands in the objectives today. So I would like to provide some insights of German culture. So it's not a complete course. There's only so much you can do in 1 hour. But to give you the core issues in a nutshell on business values and some key business behaviors that you most likely will see in Germany. We will also contrast your personal cultural preference to the cultural German norms. Most of you have probably filled out your personal cultural preference score test that we can then compare. Sean, am I hearing something in the background?
Yeah, I think I'm getting some background noise from a phone that has not been muted. So just once again.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if it was a specific.
Right, no, it's okay.
Just wanted to check. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
And I would like to very pragmatically leave today and giving you very specific pragmatic behaviors or tips on how to effectively interact with your German colleagues in your interfaces. Could be colleagues, customers, or vendors, or whatever your context will be. So how culture is being taught, Mike, I think this is your call.
We can definitely talk about this. We teach culture, and I'll just go into this very briefly, but
okay,
this is just a little bit about our learning model. And we use the intercultural awareness model to teach culture across a number of dimensions. There are 8 of them. We won't have time to look at all of them today, but this is, of course, what you're familiar with on the Culture Wizard site. And in looking at your personal cultural profile, which you've hopefully done on the Culture Calculator before today's session, you can start to see some of these readily recognizable behaviors which perhaps you would see in an interaction such as the one that we saw in the video earlier, but these are our clues as to what is below the surface in a way, what the values that drive behavior, especially in business environments. So this is a model that we've developed over years and years, and it's based on a mixture of scientific and qualitative research and also our own global business experience working in this sphere for a long time. But this is how we teach culture, and it's not, we don't use stereotypes. Cultural norms are the reality on the ground. When you're in Germany, you see that people tend to be inflexible, as Don was saying earlier. So this is not stereotyping. There's no right or wrong way with cultural norms. But this is the approach that we take at RW3 and the approach that you're familiar with on Culture Wizard. So I think that's just a quick preface that we wanted to give on cultural learning. And I think we can also, at this point, take out your personal cultural profiles and start to examine where you are in relation to Germany. And what you're seeing here is, of course, the average score for Germans across those 8 dimensions. So as we discuss, as Ina discusses some of these concepts that we're getting into in a moment, take a look at yourself and try and examine where there are gaps. You'll notice here in this hierarchy dimension that there's quite a big gap between this individual in the blue and the German score here at the top. So that's one example. But do take a look at this, and I think from here we can let Ina get into the real core of the material we've presented for today. So.
Okay. Yeah, so debriefing the polls, I don't think there's much to debrief there yet. I would just like to ask everybody that has participated or invite everyone to be more precise in your questions on your challenges on decision making and on hierarchy and communication and so forth. If you have precise issues you would like to address, please feel free to do that in the chat, so I can make sure that I can address everything that is there. And for those of you who have not responded to the polls yet, this is again an invitation to do so, so I can get a feel for the audience that is out there. Okay. So, frequent challenges. When I work with non-Germans that do work with Germans, these are the things that come up the most. The top 3 challenges when working with Germans are doing things the right way. So people stumble upon that Germans seem to be pretty dominant in knowing how things are done right, and obviously on the flip side of that also knowing how things are being done wrong and being very explicit about that. And being inflexible, as Don has mentioned before, because things need to be in an order, and when we leave that order, it seems to be that we're inflexible. The second point is formality, that people encounter formality in various ways, in various different situations, in the way we interact in our communication, maybe in dress, maybe in the way we work. So that is something that comes across your way, at least relatively compared to an American. And it seems to be very important to have a plan. So having a plan and knowing what you're doing is something that is one of the top challenges when working with Germans. Let's get into that just a little bit. There are 3 core values in German culture, things that turn around order, turn around formality, and having a plan around times and schedules. So doing things right, if we pick the first one, and doing things in a certain order, can be seen in all kinds of different areas in business. One way, for instance, can be that you see a certain order in hierarchy. Let me explain a little bit about hierarchy to you on that note, because it is that we are an egalitarian country. It might be very confusing, so people like to work on eye level, but yet hierarchy is much more pronounced than what you're probably used to in the United States. So where does that come from? Doing it right. It comes from the need to avoid uncertainties in life. In psychology, there is a concept that one of the basic needs in humankind's lives is security. And these guys who came up with culture said, that's a basic need we know, but what we're interested in, from sociology and behavioral standpoint, is how do people behave facing uncertainties? And to me personally, here is one of the biggest differentiations between Germany and the United States. In the United States, in general, facing uncertainties in life is something that is taken quite relaxed. We'll take care of it when it appears. People stand up. People reinvent themselves. People embrace things that are new. People are much more mobile. These are all indicators and implications of being rather relaxed in facing uncertain situations. In Germany, it's quite the contrary. People just hate the thought of uncertainties coming up, so we love to prepare for it. And therefore, things need to be right. Being right and orderly means we can prepare that certain issues or feelings of uncertainty do not arise. And it shows in hierarchy, so people like to be experts. You know, experts are wonderful people if you're in an uncertain culture because they give you certainty. So you can very much see it how people are educated. We call it often in Germany chimney careers. There's a very early specialization in school and later in university, and it leads you to your management position. But you become a specialist. And bosses who are well followed by their team members usually know what they're doing. That's what a German team member would be saying about a boss he really respects. He really knows what he's doing. So it's knowing and owning the subject and knowing your job. Yourself. And it's not so much like you would find in the U.S. that people swap industries, swap jobs, because a person has great skills and qualification in management, and for one step he could be managing a production site for Barilla noodles, and the next day maybe he moves to a different industry in insurances because he has great management and people skills. That is something that is very, very rarely seen in Germany, so people are very specialized. So the order in hierarchy shows that people are experts. So we don't like to jump so much from one department to the other. We like to stick in our hierarchical orders because people have a great respect for the knowledge and the expertise that people have within their departments and within their hierarchy. But rightness and order can also be seen in processes, meaning how do people prepare for certain projects? How do they behave in project life? How these processes are defined. They're carefully planned, carefully engineered and re-engineered. And I would like to share an example with you on different styles that you can see on project work, which has helped quite some of my clients. So, hang on a second. If we look at this little graph here that I try to create, you can see on the bottom line from left to right a time scale, time passes. And from bottom to top, you see the demand of action that we can develop on a project. And there are different ways to heaven for different cultures. And this one is very much driven by a very different need of certainty or avoiding uncertainty in your life and doing things right. So the first one might be something that seems familiar to you. In a project in, hang on a second, I'm trying to move. Yes, here it comes. No, it doesn't. Yeah. In an Anglo-Saxon environment, what we can observe on projects often is that people take great joy in moving into action. So I like to explain it to other cultures that you have a great brand in the United States. It's called Nike, and they have a slogan that says, "Just do it." So it's a very action-oriented environment. Get going. Getting something, on the go is something where people take great motivation from. So on projects, it's very important to get going. And then at a certain point, and you would see it at the first staircase, people stop and say, "Hey, how are we doing? Are we doing it right, or do we need extra information? Do we need to readjust? Are we heading in the right direction?" So these little points that you can see on the staircase are evaluation points. So a project is like a staircase. You move, you stop, you evaluate how you're doing. You move, you stop, you evaluate. And this is how you go. And obviously, as we know, Americans are extremely successful. This is how you do your projects very often. To a German mindset, this is very, very confusing. What Germans usually would say when they have to work with Americans like that is, "Oh my God, it's blind activism. They just start something without really thinking about what they're doing." There's a big saying in Germany that children are being taught by their parents, and it says, "You need to think before you speak. You need to plan before you act." So the staircase model is too much running into action, and it's called blind activism in Germany. The evaluation points are very confusing from a German perspective, because to a German it seems that there is no consistency. It could be that people are changing their opinions, or, which would even be worse, decisions, like a flag in the wind, which is another expression we have in Germany, and consistency when you are uncertain is something that is very important. So let me show you how Germans go about the project. It's the next one coming up. You see, first, there's actually on a project rather little action. What we do here is we carefully collect data, we analyze data, we build options, we conceptualize, and we plan. So from an Anglo-Saxon point of view, many of my American clients tell me, oh my gosh, what is it they're doing? They're not getting anywhere. How come they close their doors and they're just preparing this data? Because it's perceived as number crunching, but not really as doing something. The added value is not seen by Americans in many ways. So after this long period of preparation and analytical conceptualization, there is a big decision, and this decision usually is taken by experts that are concerning the subject you want to decide on. And then you can see that the project is rather quickly implemented. So from an Anglo-Saxon point of view, it's confusing because in the beginning you have hardly anything going on. Then you have this big decision-making, and often it's perceived as a very hierarchical, big bang decision. And then the implementation is rather quickly because it is very, very well prepared and very high degree of detail. So some of my clients that are non-German, working with Germans and German headquarters, have told me that this first phase of preparation is often something that is not perceived as preparation because there are Excel sheets in the background and there's a high demand of data. Then there's an official announcement of a decision, and some of them say then the German bulldozer comes running to implement the project, and people have the feeling that this you can't discuss anymore. And it's right, because the discussion time should be in the earlier phase. But it's not very much seen as such, or people don't feel invited in really participating in that. So these are very different styles that you can have on projects and working, and it can cause very great confusion. Do you have any reaction or question to what I've just explained? Is that something that you have experienced and observed while working with Germans? And I do believe that I've heard even a German checking in early in this call. So I would wonder, how do you feel about what I just said? So if I could have a little reaction, that would be wonderful.
This is Don Allen. I'll speak again. I think this hits the nail right on top of the head. So I've experienced exactly what you've demonstrated here.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Thank you very much. I have to tell you, on my side, it helps me if you react just a little bit. It feels like I'm speaking to Nirvana. Thank you very much, Don, for sharing this with me. Okay, so how have you been with that? Would it be helpful to share how you could bridge this difference?
I don't know that I have an answer for that, but because I have experienced where, on this side of the ocean, we do act and start moving forward and sometimes too rapid of a pace, a little bit disorganized, but people feel like we're getting towards our goal faster, if you will. But I've also seen the other way, where there's, on the German side, where there's been a lot of planning, and then once it's implemented, it doesn't allow a lot of communication back and forth. I mean, the target is set, and that's where I came up with my inflexibility. That at that point, there's no changing the bulldozer direction, if you will.
Absolutely. My advice to you would be trying to get in the interaction in the early phase where data is being collected, But I would also like to phrase something very much in general. The German culture has a higher degree of certainty, or in other words said, trying to avoid uncertainty. This is really a big, big driver in the society, and I think it's also, as every quality has a flip side to it, it is really something core in Germany. In general, I would advise you, in working with Germans, to greatly respect the uncertainty someone else has. Let me give you an example that I recently had in a big company where I had an interaction with a team, and there was a member actually, when we explained this, that started to cry. You know, cultural differences sometimes can be very emotional and extremely frustrated. So the German person started to cry, saying, you know, oh my God, what you have just explained is exactly the reason why I can't work with this person, pointing to someone else. And this person happened to be an Anglo-Saxon boss of the German. And very caringly, this American boss turned around, put the arms around the German, patting the back and saying, oh, you know, please, well, just relax. And at that point, the German really blew it. He said, you know, all you ever say to me is relax. I can't relax just because you tell me to. So what I'm trying to share with you here is this is really a fundamental need that people have. And if you would transfer to sales, it is that if a person that's trying to buy something is still uncertain, he will or she will not buy it. So a great part in sales training is trying to teach salespeople to take the worries away from the customer's mind. And it's in the same esprit, or it's in the same mindset that I would try to reach it to you. There is actually not many ways but feeding uncertainty in respecting it. So what I like to say or share is what I've seen pragmatically in everyday life is that the more relaxed culture needs to adapt to the more uncertain culture. So I guess what I'm saying here in a very direct manner, very German now, is that when on projects, it can be extremely effective from the American side to adapt more to German needs, because otherwise people will block and you will lose a lot of time and also resources and money later on the project. So my advice to you would be, if we look at these different project styles, that you adapt more to the German side when working with Germans on the German market. Obviously, it then depends who adapts to who, also on the context of who wants what from whom, obviously. But in the sense of that you're trying to do something in Germany or trying to convince German partners of something, of a project, I would highly advise you to accommodate those certainty needs, because people don't relax just because they're being told to relax. It's a fundamental need. Okay, and in this thought, in this mindset of uncertainty, it's again this basic driver, and you will find it also in your cultural calculator, in your pocket guides, in the dimensions of time, control, and formality, all of what I'm just saying. I'm just proposing an even more deep level underneath those three. They differentiate it even more detail to you. So times and schedules also feed that need. So if you are, if being punctual, for instance, in Germany is something that's very important from various angles. Being punctual on the one hand shows that you have respect for the time of the others. If they're being on time, you respect others, and that's how you show it. And you also demonstrate at the same time that you are yourself in control. in control of your time, that you master your own time management. So it has two different levels here. So being punctual in Germany usually means that you are at least 5 minutes early to the indicated time. I don't think this is the biggest issue in differences between Germany and U.S. because I find that most Americans are very much on time and punctual. This is really, German punctuality feeds this uncertainty need in wanting to control also your environment. Milestones and deadlines on projects is something that's very, very important. And it's very important, and they're taken serious. So once you formulate a milestone, it's never something that's lightly said. It's something that is serious, and you are being judged on your proper estimations for milestones and deadlines. And they're taken serious, and if for whatever reason you can't make a milestone or deadline, that is fine. The only thing that's absolutely necessary here is that you announce it ahead of time that you can't make it, and that you also provide some explanation of why it is not possible that you can make it. It has a lot to do with trust and credibility building. And this is something that is done in a rather different manner in a culture that is driven by uncertainty than a rather relaxed culture. So in the United States, I have the feeling often that trust is granted. I trust you unless you give me a reason not to trust you. So people, give you the benefit of trust in a relationship when starting to work. It's a very positive indicator from early on in the relationship. In Germany, as it's driven by uncertainty, trust cannot be granted up front like that. It needs to be built over time, and it needs to be worked for. So this milestone and deadlines, it's important that you think carefully about when you announce it, because they will go on the account of trust and credibility building, and you will be, in a way, judged upon on how good you are in estimating necessary time on projects. And it will be seen as a great sign of respect if you also indicate early if you can't make them or not. So trust and credibility is built over time, and in general, people don't necessarily trust. It's not that they distrust, but they're very neutral. And people will watch the relationship that they are having with the interfaces or customers or whatever over time. And one thing that is important is it needs to be consistent. So, keeping milestones and deadlines or providing explanations if ever you cannot make them will help you in trust and credibility gaining from a German point of view. Another side on that is on times and schedules is going to a meeting usually is also prepared, as time should be maximized. That's how Germans would actually put it, and used very effectively. So thinking about what is it exactly that we're doing and how much time do we allocate to what kind of subject is something that's also considered to be important. And again, you will be judged if you are landing in a meeting without any preparation, because being prepared is a sign of professionalism and competence in Germany. Again, you see it all points again to avoiding uncertainty, being in control, having a certain degree of formality, and the next interesting point I'd like to share with you has something to do with the formality. Formality you can also see on different levels. Most of you have, from the 12 people that have worked with Germans, most of you have been to Germany, so you might have seen that formality can also be seen in dress. Often in business environment, it depends the industry, but in general has a tendency to be a little bit more formal than what you can find in the U.S. And also in communication, we can see formality. People might share an office for quite some long time and call each other by Mr. Shell and Mrs. Baum, even though that they have every day many things that they do together. Again, to put it in a picture, when you believe that the world is uncertain and you would like to make it certain for you, all those cultures that have that make a distinction in language and how to address people, and Germany is one of them. So it's a way to demonstrate the relationship I have with people. My friends I call by my first name, and people I trust. In younger generations, in IT business and businesses that have a more loose atmosphere, you will find more that people call each other by the first name. But in many, many, many industries, and I dare say it's still the majority, people are more formal when with each other. You might not see it because when using English, it is you and it is the first name. Also, shaking the hand is a sign of this formality. There are not group ways or things like that saying hi. And eye contact is also something that falls in this category. It's very important. I don't know if you knew, but Germans have, with Dutch, the most intense eye contact in this world. And it's a sign of being engaged in a subject. It's a sign of sincerity. So many of my American clients share with me that, oh my God, Germans stare at you all the time. And sometimes it can be felt as being aggressive. It is not the intention that is behind it. Just realize the difference that in an American environment, people do face each other and there is eye contact, but you let your eyes stray a little bit more because an intense eye contact is perceived as being too aggressive. So in Germany, children are being brought up in you got to look at people, and it's a sign of a good character if that's something that you can do and you can hold eye contact. So it's a sign of sincerity and intenseness in a subject. So that is also part of the formality that you might perceive or might observe when you see that. But there's even formality in thought patterns. And I'd like to share something with you because the thought pattern, I've been told, is really something that has a lot to do with how do you convince, how do you prepare your presentations. And I even have some two company examples to illustrate to you what I mean. So, how do you come to conclusions? The German way of thinking in school trained is called deductive thinking. What do we mean by that? If a German builds a budget or builds a presentation, they usually start in the past, and let's pretend I try to present something to Mike Schell, a new idea that I have for a new product. And being German, not knowing better, what I would do is I would say, well, Michael, let me explain something to you. 5 years ago, the German market in intercultural management business was like this and like that. And what we learned is, and I draw a couple of conclusions, and I show him some sources and some data from 5 years ago. And then I slowly start building my case and the lessons that we learned. So I'm building my case one by one, A plus B plus C, and I will slowly, with my arguments in my mind, take Mike by the hand, and what I would want from him when I present to him is that he nods for every little step that I show him. This has a lot to do with trust building and showing my credibility. I show him that I know my stuff, and I show him that I've done a great research to prove my points. So I will slowly build my case, and I will, from 5 years ago, move him to what the market is today, and then I will draw my conclusion. In German, the conclusion is called Schlussfolgerung, and it even has the word Schluss, and Schluss means at the end. So the conclusion always comes at the end. Mind you, there's a very, very big German software company that's very famous in the world that had a terrible time in its beginning days to place their products and to position themselves in the U.S. And I dare say that part of the issue that they had, a core issue of what they had, is that they tried to enter the market in presenting like I've just shown to you. And if you do that, at least my experience is that most American CEOs will drop off their chairs of boredom, roll their eyes, and say, "Oh my God, why the hell is she telling me all of this? It's forever and ever and ever. Ina, just tell me what you want to do." So the American way would be inductive thinking. As you are a more relaxed culture, this correlates with mobility. So people strongly believe that if I am in the position to present something to Mike, Mike will hand me some trust and credibility, and he will probably think, if Ina's in the position to present something to me, she must be doing a halfway decent job, otherwise she wouldn't be in the position to present something to me. So Mike's expectation towards me would be, Ina, tell me, what is it you want to do? So I would have to give him my conclusion first, and this conclusion would have to be, quote-unquote, sexy. And what sexy would mean is Mike would have to understand right away what the benefit is of what I want to explain to him. What's in it for him? And then he says, "Wow, Ina, this sounds really interesting. How would you do that?" And then usually people present an implementation process of how they would do it, and it's pointed very much towards the future. So it's how you would do it step by step in carefully showing the added value and the benefit that the company, the client, your colleague will gain in doing that. So as you can see, this is a fundamental difference in presenting. And it's most interesting because it shows very much how websites are built around the world. You will see that if you look at websites in Germany of German companies in the German market, it's very deductive, a lot of background information. And in America, on American websites, you will see the benefits right away and the solutions that are out there for you to make you better than your competitor. And it's very much pointed towards the future. So it's very, very important to keep in mind when working with Germans for credibility and trust purpose building reasons that it is turned around in this more deductive way. Okay, so again, I would love to have some reactions. I still see that 26 people are still in line. Hello out there. Is it something that you have observed in working with Germans? Something that you can see? Do you have any questions concerning what I've just explained to you?
This is Mike Schell, and I would let you make a presentation to me anytime using your deductive approach. but I would also comment that it's something to do here with risk tolerance and the ability to deal with uncertainty, as you point out. That we look for Americans versus Germans look for faster conclusions. And the logical buildup that you describe is exactly what's required. Also, the great amount of detail.
Yes.
When presenting to what we've learned is that when presenting to be credible in the German environment, you have to include a lot of background, a lot of detail. You've got to reinforce the credibility, as you point out, and learn that through hard lessons, and everybody who works, any Westerner who works in Germany finds that.
Absolutely. And if you use data, I would like to add on, make sure that you put the sources of where you have this data from. it could very well happen that someone will ask you where exactly it comes from.
Right.
And again, it will have immediate effect on your credibility if you know what kind of data you're using. Okay, any other questions? Please feel free. Don't be shy.
I would also ask you one other thing, because this whole concept of German formality, that what I find is that the formality is, because I understand German, I know when people speak to each other locally, they speak to each other with more respect. But typically, when folks address Americans interact, or Brits, or any other culture I've seen interact with Germans, it's always on a first-name basis. Very rarely is there an honorific put in front of it. Is that such an inconsistency between Germans dealing with other Germans versus dealing with people from other cultures?
Yes, and often I think it simply has something to do with the language, as in English is mostly used, when speaking to other cultures. I say you cannot make the differentiation, and we are very used, in using or being on first name basis. But I often have it in team development sessions, that when it's an international team, the Germans will address each other by the first name, and the next day they will be back to family names when
really?
They cross. Yes, absolutely.
Fascinating.
Yeah. It's that sense of formality. Again, it might differ in industries. So in advertisement or in IT businesses, in IT projects where you have lots of people that are younger, it might be a little bit different, but I really would say that it's still the majority of the culture that does make this differentiation. So,
question, knowing the difference on presentations here, say you're presenting to a German audience, should you basically just kind of be aware of kind of what your diagram is showing, or would you suggest trying to make your presentation flow more the German way?
Yes, and thank you for putting it straightforward, this question. To tell you the truth, I would, again, it will depend on the context, but I would, in general, give you the recommendation to adapt it to the German way, because it's so linked with credibility and trust, and that's something that you would need. An American presentation style often is judged and perceived as being too light, not serious enough, too playful. And once you have established a working relationship for some time, and people know you and they know that you know what you're talking about, I think it's okay, and it's okay to do it in a different way. But if you're still in your relationship phase of wanting to build trust, I would highly recommend to you to go more deductive, as we say, building your cases and turning it around. Many of my American clients have really had tremendous successes in sales in changing it around.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Well, watching the time, let's sum up a little bit, but I think I've been rather clear and direct in my recommendations to you. So strategies for success concerning order is really to yes?
Can I interrupt you just for one moment
please.
Without distracting too much? Because you just mentioned direct. And one of the things that strikes me in dealing with Germans is the degree of the directness in their communication. Now, we Americans think that we're pretty direct, but I think that it's still striking. Could you talk a little bit about directness of language?
Yes, and actually it falls in a similar pattern again. Germans are among the most direct communicating cultures in the world. So most people are shocked by the way Germans communicate.
Right.
We can come across as very blunt, as harsh, and as extremely direct. We say no when we mean it, and we say this is wrong when we mean it. and we're not very good in phrasing it in a more softer or positive way. Again, it comes from making sure that not to add on to the uncertainty. So being direct is seen as a carrier of putting more transparency to a situation, in not beating around the bush, but really speaking to it. And being very, very blunt and direct is more a vehicle for building trust, and also having the courage to be very direct is perceived as something very, very positive. And it's a vehicle for sincerity and honesty in Germany. And the intention is always a positive one. The intention is always to be clear and to avoid uncertainty. So for many Germans are flabbergasted when people tell them that they're perceived as being unpolite or something like that. It's not at all the intention.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I think for me, really, if I think about the major cultural differences between the United States and Germany, there may be many others, but in a nutshell, to me, the trying to avoid uncertainty in life is really a core concept. And it shows in time management, and it shows in wanting to control. It shows in being formal, in being direct. It shows in many, many different ways. So I think it's very important to integrate that in your thinking. And I'd like to repeat that I've seen the best pragmatic and most efficient work done in when the more relaxed culture does respect the uncertainty or the ambiguity avoidance that the other culture has, because it has such fundamental meaning, and it drives so much of this behavior. It's directly linked to credibility and trust, and therefore we need so much information and background, and you need to be consistent. Once made a decision, it might take a long time to make a decision, but it's important to stick to it, not to come across as flimsy and changing your opinion like the wind. And therefore being well prepared is something that's also very important, and keeping schedules and time frames and things like that, and announcing if you cannot make certain milestones and deadlines, as I have mentioned before. This is also the explanation for a difference in language and dress code. This is an explanation for maybe that you perceive Germans as being more hierarchical. This is my job and this is your job, and bosses we are very loyal to bosses that really know their stuff and know their job intensely, and so it's that's something that we deeply respect. Okay, I would like to leave a couple of minutes and then we're shortly towards the end, to some of your questions, to make sure that you get out of this what you need. I've tried to cover most of the issues that you have addressed in your poll number 3. Is there anything that we have not covered that you would like answered? So now is the time to step forward. Don, Alan, are you happy?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I'm so glad to hear that, Don. And I'm sure those of you who are on mute agree that Ina's provided some very interesting insights today. I want to just mention I'm bringing up a window here with a few useful links. We've provided access to our new learning course, Working with Germany. If you click that right there, you can check that out. And a lot of what we discussed today is built into that course, including that video interaction and a few others. So a very interesting resource that you may consider as an addition to your Culture Wizard sites. The Germany Pocket Guide is the second resource here in that list. That's a one-pager that is convenient when you're traveling. If you would like to use it, on the go, you can get it through your mobile phone as well, through the Culture Wizard mobile version of that website. So 2 resources we want to leave you with so that you can continue to develop this competency in working with Germany, and hopefully what Ina discussed today has been very useful and insightful. I for one, found it fascinating, and I'm German myself, and learned a few new things here about my father's background and whatnot. So anyway, I think it's a good time to ask more questions. We do if people want to stay on for another minute, I'm sure that would be okay. If there are any further questions.
Yeah, I'm here. Happy to have them.
Think not.
Okay.
So, Ina, vielen Dank. Das war sehr gut.
Bitteschön.
I said thank you very much. It was excellent. We appreciate it. And for everybody online, we appreciate your joining us. And do check out download the Germany Pocket Guides. And if you get a chance, take a look at the Working with Germany course, because it'll cover a lot of this material. And, of course, if you have any questions, come back to us. We'll be happy to answer them at any time after this program. Any other thoughts? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ina.
Bye.
Thank you.